Well,
I am starting the meeting because we're at 7 o'clock. So,
okay.
all right.
I'll comb my hair. Okay, are we live? Grant?
Yes, we are live.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to call this meeting of Gloucester School Committee to order. I will remind everybody that the mission of Gloucester Public Schools is for all students to be successful, engaged, lifelong learners. And I will ask you to join me in the salute to the flag. Just a second, here we go. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The first order of business is, okay, I got the wrong agenda in front of me. So let me just get the right agenda up. The first order of business is oral communications. If there's anybody here who would like to address the school committee on any subject other than what's on the agenda, you can do that by raising your hand, and I will recognize you. If you are dialing in on a phone call, you have to press *9. I'll also remind everybody that this meeting is being recorded. Okay. I don't see anyone wishing to speak. Okay, so we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is recognitions. Are there any recognitions? Kathy?
I just want to reiterate, I know we've acknowledged the efforts of the teachers and all the staff and the administration in previous meetings, but they continue to do outstanding effort in terms of getting our kids back on a schedule. I know there are many kids that were delighted to have some routine, some academic challenge, and some work to be done. And as well as both seeing their teachers and classmates online. So, you know, I commend them for doing everything they can and continuing to try to improve how we deliver instruction in this remote day. That's it. Thanks.
Samantha?
I just was able to listen to a presentation from Mike Hale from the DPW during the B&F meeting, and I just want to recognize the really incredible work that's being done at O'Malley by the DPW. It sounds like it's pretty extensive. I can't wait to see it. I know that it's long overdue, and the teachers and the students alike are going to appreciate it when they come back home. So thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, I would just like to reiterate what Kathy said about the teachers, as well as I'd like to point out that our nurses have been right from the get-go in this situation, been volunteering to work with the health department of the city doing follow-up, and I'm trying to remember exactly what they call it when they make all the calls to see who's been exposed to somebody
Contact.
who's might have been exposed.
It's contact tracking.
Contact tracking. And they've been doing that, and they jumped right in without any real prodding. So I'd like to particularly point out that our nurses are doing an outstanding job. And I'd also like to talk about our food service workers who are providing daily lunches and breakfasts for almost 400 students. And everybody else, but I'd like to point out those two. Okay. Anybody else? Any other recognitions? We will move on to, I don't believe we have a student advisory council here tonight. The consent agenda. Are there any items on the consent agenda that anyone would like removed for further discussion? Melissa?
So I didn't see anything on the warrants. Was it meant to be what came out of BNF earlier?
I didn't see anything either. Our BNF meeting got cut short,
Yeah.
and because
Transfer.
and we never got to the warrant.
So
Did you sign a
B, C,
warrant?
and D.
Kathy, did you sign a warrant this week?
Yes, I did. Last Thursday, I did.
Okay, so I know I saw it. When Stephanie sent out the agenda, there were some other documents, and
So I'm looking at it, DNF minutes and program. It's not the warrant.
yeah.
I mean, I'm okay voting on it if Kathy reviewed it, but just saying it didn't get circulated.
Okay.
I reviewed it very carefully.
Was there anything outstanding that you noticed?
No, really very, regular expenses.
Okay, so
And then the transfers and referrals are on the agenda. Do we have anything under those categories?
there's a transfer that that's going to come out of BNF that we're going to vote on separately tonight. But the rest of the transfers, do you want to, Gary could explain what the other transfers were if you'd like.
Sure.
Well, was it part of the BNF packet? Is that what you're?
Yes.
Is that what's in this consent agenda? Okay, now is there any referrals?
No. Not that I know of.
Okay, so it's the consent agenda minus D that we approved.
Okay.
So I'll make a motion that we approve the consent agenda without the referrals.
Okay. Second, anyone?
Second,
Okay. Maria, roll call vote?
Joel,
Yes.
Jonathan,
Yes.
Melissa,
Yes,
Samantha,
Yes.
Laura,
Yes.
Kathy.
yes.
I don't think the mayor's here, right?
I don't see her.
I don't see her.
Okay.
He was trying to get in.
Okay. The next item on the agenda is a presentation from Doran Whittier on the updated progress and design at the East Gloucester Veterans Elementary School. So I'm going to turn this over to Michelle Rogers.
Is this the same one that was to the council last night?
It is.
Yes.
So if you had seen the one to the council last night, this will look very familiar. I think most of you were there, so I will go through a little bit quicker tonight, and then we can have some time for any questions that you might have, if that's appropriate, Jonathan.
It's a little hard to hear you, Michelle.
Is that any better? I'm gonna hold a mic up to, okay. All right, I'm gonna switch over. to my screen. And I'm going to ask if everybody can see the screen and my cursor.
It has not updated yet.
I am not seeing your screen, Michelle.
Give me 1 second.
Okay. Did I have to wait for your approval?
You should be able to do it. Let me make one other setting change here. We already did this. So,
Yep.
where are you? We have a solution. There you go. I'll make you co-host. You should be able to present now.
Can you see this now?
Not yet.
Nope. Are you selecting your entire screen or just the?
Screen 2.
Okay. No, nothing prevents you from doing that.
Let me see if I move it to screen 1. Sorry.
What did we do that made it change?
It looks like.
Oh, there we go.
it's- Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, you can't do the second screen. You can only use the primary screen.
Oh, okay. Earlier it was working with the second. All right. Oh, but now you're going to see it in presentation mode. Oh, that's okay. Will that work for everybody if we just keep moving forward? Can you see this in presentation mode? Or do I need to change this?
This looks okay.
See if I can help it a bit.
There you go.
I'm not hearing it very clear.
Okay. How about now?
Better. Yep,
Okay.
thank you.
Looks good.
All right. From the beginning. So tonight we're going to walk you through the schedule of the site, the exterior building design update, and interior design update. And so one of the first things that we want to talk about is, despite COVID-19, we have managed to stay on schedule, and our consultants have managed to stay on schedule as well. So our goal is to be presenting our cost estimates for schematic design to our estimators on April 29th. That is the entire package of drawings and specifications will go out to both our consultant as well as the OPM, and they will get an independent cost estimate. When those come back, we'll have a chance to review them, and then we have a reconciliation, and then we come back to the committee, the school building committee, with the cost estimates. All of that gets put into the package, and the delivery date to the MSBA is on target for July 8th. So we're maintaining our target dates. The MSBA is on schedule to date as far as we know as well. With our site plan update, the last time we presented to you about 6 weeks ago or so, our site, we had developed our site and our site circulation plan. And since then we had gone to speak to the AHJs, authorities having jurisdiction, which is fire and police, as well as the DPW. And we spoke a lot about how traffic works on the site, how cars come in and circulate around, how fire trucks would enter the site and circulate around the building. And then we talked about overflow parking for special events, and we talked about snow storage and how to remove snow from the site. When we spoke about the site originally, we talked about having play fields in the back of the site. We also talked about play areas that were for the older students in the back of the site, some outdoor learning spaces, playful hardscape play areas, small kindergarten play area out front of the building, and then our bus circle being doing double duty as also hardscape play areas. And since that time, we've progressed with our site. We've taken into account some of the recommendations of the police and fire. We've made our emergency access lane wider all the way around, all the way here. We've accommodated for overflow parking along the back loop, as well as along the emergency access drive. We've taken into account the recommendation to reduce retaining walls and therefore reducing costs. So in doing so, the site is now, we've removed the entire retaining walls along this area here, which had an effect on the parking out front, which I'll get to in a moment. And then we took the recommendation of traffic to provide a separate turning lane into the site to pull cars off of Webster Street quicker. Oops, sorry. So zeroing in on the back part of the site, we've incorporated a half basketball court back here. We've accommodated for, in addition to the bus, the queuing loop that will come around this area in the afternoon, we can accommodate 16 parking spaces for overflow parking, as well as still get an emergency vehicle past all of those and up along the building side. We've kept the turf field, added some swing sets back here, and provided fencing and gating around the perimeter of the whole play area. And in the front of the building, we've increased the width of this access drive to accommodate 14 overflow parking spaces and still provide access for emergency vehicles. We've tested the turning radius for both buses and fire trucks, as well as the access slope and radius and turning into the site. And when I talked about the removal of this retaining wall, we had to change the direction of the parking spaces along Webster Street. So they're now parallel. That reduced those parking spaces from 10 parking spaces to 6, but overall we were still able to accommodate 120 parking spaces on the site. At the front of the building, we've brought into our design the theme of having a pier, a dock, and then some piers that pull out into the landscape with some bioretention drainage will be accommodated underneath this area here. And then these areas within this area, the pavers here will be used for outdoor classrooms and seating areas. So you can accommodate seating spaces here for teaching, some art classes or gathering. If the flagpole is out here, you can have an all-school gathering out in this area as well. Also, when the buses are dropping off, they'll be entering over here, but students could enter under a cover to the main entrance, and students and pedestrians walking from the parking area will come in this area here to the main entrance. As far as the exterior design, we've done a lot of work on the exterior design to make the building more cohesive, tying both the public spaces in with the academic areas. So those of you who remember the design, the cafeteria is on the lower right-hand side, the gymnasium on the second floor above. The art room and media center is over the administration area. And then to the left of the building, we have our academic courts with kindergarten on the ground level. And in between those spaces, we have special education spaces, extended learning spaces, office spaces within the area in the middle of the building. This is the front elevation of the building. Again, the main entrance, cafeteria, gymnasium, media and art. As we move around to the back portions of the building, this is facing out towards the playground, so your extended learning spaces are in the center of the building, flanked by academic classrooms and teaching spaces. And on the lower side here, you see the media center and the art on the second floor with the administration overlooking the bus loop and the front entrance. And on this side, the cafeteria with its entrance for parent drop-off underneath the canopy, and the gymnasium above that. We've moved our design forward and started doing renderings so that we can begin to get a look and feel for the overall size of the building as well as the landscape. So what you see here is as you're coming up Webster Street, this would be the turn aisle going into the parking area. The front courtyard space and gathering area, again, the gymnasium on the second floor with the cafeteria below. And you can see beyond the bus turnaround loop. As you move further up Webster Street, you're about at the middle of the building overlooking the bus loop. And then this is about the intersection of Friend Street looking back down towards the building. And you can see the retaining walls in the beginning of the emergency access drive with the kindergarten play space in front and the art and media and main entrance beyond. The interior design side, we've brought the design forward following our parties for warm wood structures within the space and playful seating areas that you see integrated within the structure. We're looking to bring art into space and connecting the main entrance to the cafeteria and connecting both horizontally and vertically with the media center and the gymnasium on the second floor. On the second floor, you would come up the stairs, and again, you have the vertical connection with the main entrance. You have the media center entry on the left-hand side, again, incorporating those playful porthole windows. Beyond those are seating within the library space for children to gather either one or two students and sit quietly by themselves or in small group areas. The railing system will be made of wood railing at the top with integral metal mesh. And again, we have our post and beam structures tying the structure all the way through, connecting both the media center all the way through into the lobby. In the cafeteria, which is right off the main entrance lobby, we have this connection to the entryway. Again, the porthole windows. And the ceiling, which is mimicking a sunburst here, has been designed so that it has an acoustical feature so that you can both visually and acoustically separate some of these spaces. And then beyond that, within the cafeteria, we have acoustically separated space for students who need a quiet lunch space. So this is all glass so that they can be visually monitored by cafeteria staff, but they're still acoustically separated. The finishes within this space, you can see the higher tile walls, which are great for maintenance as well as longevity and easier to clean. In the classrooms, both our kindergarten classroom as well as our general classrooms, the spaces are generally the same, with the exception that the kindergarten classrooms are larger than general classrooms and have a bathroom, a single user bathroom within that space. But you can see here that cubbies are built in with storage above for teachers, mail slots for the students. You have multiple teaching zones within this space. So you have a teaching zone with projectors on one wall, writable surface and folding wall on the other side. And this wall would fold back and connect two classrooms together. You have different zones towards the back of the space as well as towards the front. And then adjacent to the kindergarten or between all classrooms is the small group room, which will be used for push-in space for special education. Within both classrooms, we have a special feature for a built-in seating area. This is for students to go and sit either by themselves or with one other student. This is for students who need to separate at some point and still be observed, or they could choose to go and work separately at the window space. If you remember, we had in our last presentation spoken about moving the auditorium to the second floor, so it's now part of the gymnasium, and that's reflected in this design here. So here you have the stage, and as part of that, we've enlarged the gymnasium so that you can have some spectator seating within this space. The gymnasium is large enough to have two classrooms going on at the same time, if it's divided, or a full court for basketball. And you can see this gymnasium here down in the photo has a similar situation where they have the stage as part of the gymnasium. And then finally, our media center. Again, flexibility being part of our theme here. The furniture will be flexible so that you can arrange it in smaller groups or larger groups for different size classrooms. You have multiple teaching spaces. Here you have, it is visually and physically connected to the art room through an overhead door, so that the door opens up and you can have a maker space outside the art room and have that kind of connection between art and media center. And then within the space, we have different seating spaces. You can see along the windows here in the background, you have that same kind of curved space so children can either grab a book and go sit within their little space by themselves or with a buddy. They would be large enough for 1 or 2 students to sit together. And so that's the end of our presentation, and it brings everything that we've done to date up to date for you. Do you have any questions?
Questions, Laura?
Thank you for that, Michelle. 2 initial questions. How are children who are unable to climb the stairs moving around this building?
We do have an elevator within the building.
Okay, 1 elevator?
1 elevator. It's within the it's borders between the academic area and the public space. So it would always be always accessible for anybody who wanted to get to that floor level within the public space.
Okay, and just my second question, just looking at the view from Webster Street onto the campus, just seems like the school is very exposed. You know, it's not, just thinking about West Parish where you sort of have to go down a long road and the school is not, I'm just wondering about that from a safety perspective. Is that how schools are still being designed at the moment?
Yeah, we don't have the luxury of having a larger site here, but we do find that exposure isn't a bad thing. You can see who comes onto your site immediately. You can monitor it, having the administration space overlooking both the entrance and the parking area, as well as that breadth of Webster Street. You can monitor who's coming onto the site fairly easily.
Okay, thank you.
Melissa?
Thank you. Michelle, you mentioned that you had to take out a couple of parking spots, and I thought you said that you got down to 124 spaces for this design?
Our goal has been 120.
120?
Yep, and we have managed to keep 120 spaces on site.
So, and that means that there's enough parking for staff, and is there extra?
Yes, so your full-time equivalent staff is about 80, and we use a 1.5 ratio to staff.
The ratios don't mean anything to me because we heard that at West Parish. I just want to make sure that there's enough parking for staff and then some visitors
Yes.
during the day.
Yes. There
What
is.
I'm hoping to hear, I should say.
Yes.
Okay, excellent. And then my second question is, I noticed the colors. Is the intent to keep it different colors of brick and maybe some grays on the exterior?
So we haven't chosen the exact color of the brick. We do know it's going to be a brick. It's going to be in a deeper red tones, and the grays, we're looking at the different color for the metals. Either there'll be lighter grays or darker grays. We haven't chosen those, but the rendering is beginning to help us make those kinds of decisions.
Okay, thank you so much.
Samantha?
Thank you for the presentation. Could you sort of explain what the purpose of the kindergarten play space is? Is it just an extension of their sort of school day to get outside, or is that meant to be used for their recess instead of the larger play space?
So typically we have kindergarten children qualify for smaller play structures. So
I'm sorry to interrupt, but you can't be heard. No one can hear her. I'm getting all these emails. I can't hear you. It looks like you're muffling, and we have to like sit on the, gonna have to speak louder. I don't want to be rude, but then they're gonna say this is no good presentation because we couldn't hear you.
Thank you. Is this any better? I'm holding the mic right up to my mouth.
Yes.
Is everybody muted?
Yeah, I remuted just to let her know, and I unmuted now, just to let her know that she couldn't be heard. And I was getting text saying I can't hear her.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
No, I agree. I was just trying to see if other people were unmuted and maybe that was why.
I'll try to speak louder. So yes, kindergarten, we typically do a special size playground for kindergarten students. Their equipment is typically smaller than than the 5th grade students or older students. So it's not that they can't play on the back ones, it's just that they have their own dedicated space as well.
Yeah, I guess it just seems fairly small without a lot of running space, so I wouldn't want to see that be sort of in lieu of the larger outdoor space.
They also have the full bus loop as part of their play area as well. So they can take out their little bicycles or tricycles and have that bus loop, which will also have hopscotch on it and those kinds of events.
Okay, thank you for clarifying. Then my other question is, you said that there's sort of quite a bit of wood interior. What is the maintenance like for that?
Actually, so we've tried to address this a couple of times. Wood is actually fairly easy to maintain. The columns and beams, I think you've seen over at West Parish, you put the varnish on them or the sickens on them, whether they're inside or outside, and then you can leave them alone for about 10 years. You have to stick to that regimen, but it's no different, or actually it's less than what would be required if you were painting gypsum wallboard, or less expensive than if you were doing a tile wrap around them.
I guess, so I heard you say that there's going to be wood railings.
The top of the railing is wood.
Okay.
Just the top finish. The rest of it would be either a metal or a mesh.
Okay.
Rich?
Rich?
Thank you. We heard from the DPW just before we had this meeting, and they painted a picture of maintenance of the wood posts, particularly outside, as being, I think I can characterize it as exceptionally extensive, involving sanding and days worth of work. And that would be a legitimate concern, obviously. Can you speak to that?
I cannot. That's the first that we've heard of them having to do that kind of work on those posts.
So
Are
then,
they speaking specifically about West Parish, or are they speaking about posts in general?
So then, West Parish, you've built other buildings, I presume, with similar kinds of columns on the outside and on the inside.
Mm-hmm.
And what is, from your vantage point, what's the track record?
We've had a very good track record with the kind of finish that we place on the outside, which was similar to what we had done at West Parish, which is it's like a marine quality finish on the outside for the wood, and the maintenance is quite low. If it I believe that after the first year you have to redo it one more time because it sinks in to the fresh wood, but then after that it should stick for a few years. So no more difficult. We haven't found it to be any more difficult than other maintenance around any building. I'd be happy to have a conversation with Mike Hale or Joe Lucido about that.
Joel?
Yeah, just to piggyback, the wood columns at West Parish are being refinished. Might be upon the recommendation from Brad Dorr last when he was touring the building. He mentioned those are due for refinishing, and Mike Hale was just in the last meeting talking about how West Parish's maintenance costs or maintenance task list is, bigger than any of the other schools we have, and seemingly that some of it was for good reason and some of it was, could have been avoided if different finish materials had been chosen. So I guess that would just be, my hope is that these considerations, I know you mentioned Joe Lucido is on the building committee, and that Joe Lucido hopefully understands the maintenance consequences of decisions that are being made. So I hope that that's being taken into account, and that the wood finish, as you said, I know West Parish has a lot of tile on the walls, and that was explained to me and others that was a little more expensive up front, but cheaper in the long run because kids can't kick them in and they require less painting, et cetera, et cetera. And so I'd hope that if we have wood finishes on the interior, there's the same justification that, in fact, to be painting less, should be repairing, you know, fewer holes, or, you know, whatever those reasons are, to justify what the outset may seem like a more high grade or high maintenance finish. I have other questions, Jonathan, if I can keep going, or do you want to do one at a time?
Go ahead.
Okay. So the play field you have out back, what are the dimensions on that play field?
I believe they are 60 by 90.
Okay. So just for this committee's, I did a quick lookup. An indoor basketball court is 94 feet by 50 feet. A football field's 360 by 160. A soccer field's 360 by 225. So this is a very small, this is, God, smaller than a house lot in like the most dense area.
It's about the same size as the gymnasium.
The gymnasium, you said, holds a full-size basketball court, right?
The gymnasium is 6,000 square feet. So this is a little bit less than that.
So that's just a consideration that the school committee should be aware of, that this, you know, this will be the smallest play field at any of our schools, and it'll be notably smaller. My second question, coming from BNF, Mike Hale also mentioned that because of the site design, there's no snow storage space, which means we will not be able to plow snow, but to snow blow snow into a truck and have it all off site. And Mike Hale said this was going to be twice as expensive as normal plowing forever. And so I'm wondering if we return to some of these retaining walls, if, again, more expensive up front to build an additional space where there would be some snow storage capacity, if in the long run, if over the next 50 years, we're not paying twice the snow removal cost, do we make that money back? And is that something we can still look at this point? You know, try and get it right up front.
I don't want to speak
you
for.
can't build stuff without snow storage space in any other sector of the city. So it's kind of funny that the city itself would build something without it.
Right. I don't want to speak for Mike or Joe, but we did review the site plan with them, and we found, I believe that their opinion is that not having the retaining walls is helpful because they get to blow the snow up into the grassed areas. So in that bus loop, they won't have to lift it up over retaining wall. They can blow the snow up in that area.
Okay, well, that's the opposite of what was reported just an hour ago. So I guess I would just like that to be circled back, because if it is in fact going to all have to be hauled off and because for whatever reason not blown onto the grass, I'd like to just see if there's a way to solve that problem, you know, early in the process rather than decades of increased cost. Another question I had was related to the outdoor classroom. I know that both the East Gloucester and the Veterans principal are on the building committee. I'm curious whether that will ever actually get used for what it's being described that it could be used for. I think it looks great. I think the premise behind how you could use it is interesting, but I don't know that programmatically we would ever see an elementary school class outside in that outdoor classroom taking advantage of it in the way it should be. And so I'm wondering if either of them have chimed in during the building committee meetings and opined that yes, if that is built, it will get used, or you know, or not.
Rich, do you want to address what the principals have stated about the outdoor classrooms?
So, Joel, your position is if we build it, they will not come.
No, I'm wondering if they will.
The principal's point of view is diametrically opposite of that. The whole business about building a LEED, environmentally sound and educational environment for the school is part of the educational process. And I think that both principals have been quite enthusiastic about making the assertion that they want to see that used so that, you know, kids have an opportunity not only to work inside, but to be outside, to do science, and just learn a little bit more about their environment. So I've only heard genuine enthusiasm from the principals in this regard.
Well, that's great. And if it will be used, then it, probably makes sense to include it. I just didn't understand. Again, one of the programmatic things that I don't quite know how to reconcile. We're about to spend, $1.7 million in safety upgrades at the O'Malley Middle School and the high school. Right now, the veterans teachers are told they're not allowed to even open their doors to the outside when it's hot out for safety reasons, but yet they will be allowed to take their students completely out of the classroom and put them down in an outdoor classroom in plain sight of Webster Street. It just seems confusing to me how they'll be allowed to do that if they can't even open a door right now.
Anybody want to take a stab at that?
We're armoring 2 schools and then putting an outdoor classroom at a 3rd school. Those seem, again, I'm not necessarily against having an outdoor classroom, but it just seems like we're heading in 2 different directions as a community with the signals we're giving as to how we're keeping our students safe or how we prefer our students to be educated.
Right. Michelle, if I can ask you a question which may help to respond to Joel's comments. All schools today obviously have to have built-in security systems. Will the outdoor classroom be in a situation and a location whereby they are in a relatively safe zone because access into the building is, through certain areas? Now, in the most, somebody parachuting in or taking pot shots from up on the hill or something along those lines, is that the basis for which we make our decisions? Or do we create the strongest, most secure circumstances that we can within reason and also provide students with opportunity at the same time? So my question again, after bloviating, is will the classroom be in a situation where it's not necessarily open and vulnerable, but is protected by the security measures that the school will have?
The outdoor classrooms are located adjacent to outdoor play spaces. So your classrooms are in the same areas as your play spaces. And I don't think we're going to stop outdoor play. We're going to keep that happening. I believe that one of the reasons why you don't want the doors open is because you don't want people to inadvertently come into the building. You want to keep your building secure. Around the site, you have fencing around all the play areas, fencing around all the entire site. And so your children are within the fenced areas. They're safe as far as that goes. But I can't really address the rest of the questions because
I thought the
people are vulnerable
piers
outside.
I thought the pier design that was being highlighted, and that's where the outdoor classroom area is, right? Where you showed the dock architecture and the pier.
There is an outdoor gathering classroom there, and there's also.
Isn't that in front of the front door?
It is, yeah. There's also.
Now all visitors to that school will be passing right past that outdoor classroom to get to the front door during the school day?
If you have visitors coming when the students might be out there, yes. And we also were planning to have an outdoor classroom in the back near the swing sets as well.
And again, I admit I am not the expert here as to what the best placement is, but it just seems funny to me. They're about to armor the front entrances for the high school and the middle school and then put an outdoor classroom in front of the front door of this new elementary school.
And it's adjacent to the bus loop where the students will also be having recess as well. So the outdoor classrooms and the outdoor play spaces are adjacent to each other.
Kathy?
Last question.
Kathy?
I guess I just want to point out, I think all of our school gardens, or at least some of our school gardens, happen to be situated in front of the schools. West Parish is closer to the road. East Gloucester is right in the front of the school. So from a, I guess, utilizing the space of our sites, sometimes they're out in front. Same with O'Malley. O'Malley's right in the courtyard, and they do learning outside.
The veterans is there as well.
Yeah, so anyway, I just wanted to point that out because I'm not an expert either on the topic. My question has to do with the wooden railings inside. And I know as a building committee and when we did the visioning and and the look and feel for the inside. We talked a lot about warmth. But I also know at West Parish, for the railings themselves, for the stair railings, we picked, I believe, a stainless steel because of a maintenance, right? They didn't need to be painted. They didn't need to be varnished. They didn't need to be anything. So the railing's still going to be a metal, but the wood is a more decorative cap.
The wood would be the cap part of it, and the rest of the railing and the guardrail piece would be, and the handrails where the students are actually touching are all the stainless steels or
Okay.
the metals.
Great, thanks.
Laura?
Thank you. Just a question on what looked to me like a sort of glass, a high glass front and back of that first sort of center entrance space. Am I correct there?
The wall that's mostly glass in the back, or are you talking?
I thought there was one also above the, close to the entrance to the school and in the back. Is that, I don't have it, I can't see it in front of me, but
Yeah. Can I share my screen again, Grant?
sure.
Yes, you should be able to.
Can you see that screen?
No.
No.
Try it again.
Nope. Let's try one more time.
And Michelle, please make sure you're loud enough. Sorry.
Yes, sorry.
I'm sorry.
Can you see this now?
Yep.
Okay. Are you talking about in the front or at the rear of the building?
Oh, it must be in the rear. Okay.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
so this is the extended learning areas. So they have views of the backyard from this extended learning space. Which
So
is-
that's 3 floors of classrooms there?
Yes, so each area here would be a floor of classrooms. So your kindergarten and your first grade share this extended learning. The second and third graders share this extended learning, and the fourth and fifth graders share this extended learning.
Okay, so what I was curious about related to that was 2 things, both cleaning and maintenance, which may be obvious, but also sort of climate control issues, sun, you know, I'm sure you know the orientation there, but I'm just wondering how that impacts temperature in those spaces.
Yeah, so first, all the glass is tuned to orientate for the sun. So we actually worked with a glass tuner to make sure the coloring of the glass is correct so that we don't get the heat and the hot spots within the glass. And then as far as air conditioning and heating inside the building, all of that, we work with very closely with our consultants to make sure that we don't have the cold spots up against glass.
And then related to maintenance and cleaning of that?
So it's similar. So at the West Parish School, we have a similar condition where we have a couple of three-story areas where we have glass. So you would have the same kind of cleaning program that you have over at West Parish for their stair towers and where we have the full glazing there.
Okay. I can check with Mikhail on that. Okay, thank you.
Samantha?
Could you, now that we're back on the presentation, go back to the outdoor space in the back, please?
This one back here?
That shows the fencing. You had one that showed
The fencing and the gates.
So if there was an emergency, where are students and staff going to congregate?
We haven't done the emergency plan yet. That's something that you work out with the principals and with the police and fire departments.
So it's horrible to think like this, but I'm just curious, will there be gates for somebody to be able to like if they needed to get out? Because I'm imagining retaining walls and then fencing and not really an exit from the back if necessary. And if there was not an ability to get to the front because of an emergency, is there a way to get out from the back?
So we don't have retaining walls back here. So
Okay.
the natural slope of the land is as it's existing right now. And right now you have fencing along the property line out back here. beyond this is the highway, so there's fencing
Yeah.
along there. And then there's a property up above that, and then the fencing goes beyond that. So what we did is we just brought the fencing closer to the play space.
Okay. So I guess my question is still, is there a way for people to exit out the back to Webster Street? So Webster Street sort of wraps around, right? If I'm looking at this correctly.
This is Webster Street.
Yeah. And then it goes, are there
I guess
houses?
I'm just
Maybe,
questioning, where are
maybe
they
you should
supposed
talk
to be
about the
going?
gates, Michelle, about how the gates operate.
Well, I was just wondering, you're concerned about people leaving the site, and I don't think the intention is for students to leave the site in the event of an emergency.
So I guess I'm wondering, there's the entrance and the exit. If for some reason the front of this is blocked off due to an emergency, is there a way for kids to get up and out onto Webster Street if they cannot get out the front? That's what I'm wondering about.
So if they were to exit here, there's a gate here, and they would, get beyond that gate, and, I suppose we could add another gate back in here, but they would end up climbing a hill.
Okay.
I think the emergency exit plans are something that the police and the fire have to work out with the principals.
Yeah, I can wait for that. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? I can't see everybody right now with this view.
Yeah, just to follow. So that safety evacuation plan, is police and fire going to be consulted before this design's further locked in to make sure that they see a workable path, or did you do we just give them the final plan and say, hey, here's what you have, figure out the best way to use it? I'm just not sure which.
We have met with them 3 times to date, and at each time we've incorporated all of the recommendations within the plans. So we have not heard any questions about evacuation plans or access to the site. They've seen the plans and appear to be happy with them.
And then I guess even like thinking about fire drills and thinking just about, from my own experience, how far away from a building, you would go away in a fire drill. Is there even that much space on that site to get, far enough from the fire drill to be the appropriate distance away from a building that's, under duress?
It was not brought up as a concern, so we can ask Chief Smith again, but it wasn't something that he brought to our attention.
Joel, that was pretty much what I was sort of getting at, is if for some reason there's not access to the front due to an emergency like a fire, is there some place for people to go? Because it is
Right. If 400 kids have to go to the playground in the back, are they even safe back there if there's an emergency in the building?
Exactly.
Yeah, these points are all very well taken. Our other emergency management plans, including West Parish, have been done in conjunction with the police department. And I think that as things are now taking shape, it's probably a very good idea that we have further conversations with them so they can assist in our making decisions about the proper course of action if there's an evacuation or something along those lines.
Any other questions? Laura?
Just one more thing, and I'm sure it's way too soon in our world process of this, but is there any, in architecture circles or school building circles, obviously the pandemic that we're in the midst of may lead to new ways of congregating in the future. I know you're far along in the process of designing this school. I'm just wondering if there's been any early, preliminary, oh, we're going to have to do X differently as we think about the future with global pandemics here in the United States. So again, I know it's very soon. This school is far along in the process, but I'm wondering if there's been any conversation in architectural circles about what that's going to look like in the next year.
I think we've all come to understand the importance of technology and making sure that students have technology available to them in classrooms so that they can learn. I think the schools that have been successfully teaching online have students that have had exposure to technology within their classrooms. So I think that's one of the important things that we're going to continue to see moving forward. Architecturally, I don't know if things are going to change a lot due to this. You know, we work very hard for air infiltration systems and making sure that there's always clean air. A few years back, they actually did change the amount of air, fresh air that you see going through a building. That's why teachers are often complaining that they're cold. It's because the fresh air intake is 100% fresh air more often than it used to be in the past. I don't know what else might be coming from this. I'm anxious to see, but I do know that technology has been one of those things that we've talked about quite a bit.
Okay, thank you.
Kathy?
Just one last question. So it sounds like the concerns that were just brought up about kind of the evacuation and things like that. I assume you'll have a meeting again with the safety heads, the chiefs. Are we too far down a path to make significant changes in that area, or is this more of a discussion to confirm what the process actually would be, given that the fire chief and the police chief have been in, 3 meetings with you and talked about what they needed for access and what all their codes are and everything else. So I'm just wondering if you expect anything except clarification coming out of those discussions.
I'm not expecting anything to change drastically. Whatever recommendations that they have, we would certainly incorporate within our plans. But given that we've had some contacts with them and that they've seen these plans and that we've incorporated all of their recommendations, I don't expect to hear any more. But I don't know. We will certainly be meeting with them again. And again, we're only at schematic design. So from now until the end of the process, if we have the opportunity to continue, that would be something that we'd certainly be meeting with them more often about.
Yeah. And just one last comment, because of our discussion with Mike Hale, and in our building committee meetings, I know we have discussions and we ask questions about maintenance and costs, but it's becoming very clear that the least amount of kind of labor-intensive maintenance. Mike Hale pointed out certain things as it relates to the sophistication of some of their maintenance,
Right.
which he said, things are moving that way. So I don't think that was the issue. It's more, if we're picking finishes, let's make sure we pick them that have, lower labor-intensive requirements than others. So we just need to be mindful as we move forward in selections.
Right. We also do, because we're going for a LEED certified building, but like West Parish was LEED Gold. I think you actually got to Gold. There are certain maintenance things that are required for those kinds of maintaining those kinds of certifications as well. Things like flooring, those kinds of solutions that you use, the kind of materials that we use within the building, all of that plays into the longevity of the building, as well as its ability to, be environmentally friendly.
Melissa?
2 questions. One, how tall is the fence going around the back that we're worried about in the back? How high is it?
I don't know right at the moment. I could find out for you.
Is it something that the kids could easily get over, or is it something that's going to be really high so that the kids can never get over?
It's a requirement because you don't want the children, there are what they call runners, and you don't want them leaving the site. So I believe at West Parish, we were asked to do a fence that was 6 foot high. So I think that's what we have in our.
And is it typical that you put like gates in those type of fences? You know, if
We
it's like
will,
a chain link?
we will if we're asked to. It's not
Yeah.
typical.
Okay. And my second question is, what are we doing that's green related to the school that we would see in the design?
Lots. So we're trying to achieve LEED V4 silver. So the requirements of LEED have progressed considerably since our last school with this district. It is now harder to get to silver, let alone gold, than it was back when we did West Parish. So we are trying to achieve a LEED V4 silver for this building. And in doing so, we'll be talking about the HVAC system. At tomorrow's meeting, we've looked at all of the finishes and materials for the building. We're looking at the turf field is one because you don't need the irrigation. We're looking at the kinds of building structure that we put in place, the amount of thermal insulation that we have in place. It starts from the ground and goes straight up. I can share the LEED card with you if you would like. It's a scorecard.
I'd like to see it.
Yeah.
Is there an intention to do like any gray water or geothermal, anything?
We're not well at this moment. We're not doing the geothermal. We could. We're at the point where we could make that change if we wanted to, but that's not. It wasn't what the direction that we're going in. We will have we will be PV ready on the roof so that you could put 50% of the roof could be solar panels if that's the direction you want to go in. And that's a requirement by the MSBA to have PV ready roof.
Okay. Yeah, I'd love to get a
Certainly
copy of
can
that
share
list.
the LEED scorecard with you
Yep.
in the coming weeks.
Thank you very much.
Samantha, did you have a question?
I'm just curious, does the reimbursement change depending on what level LEED certified we are?
There's a 2 percentage points that you get for being more energy efficient. It used to be based on achieve LEED silver to get those 2 percentage points, but now it's just being 20% higher than your baseline for your energy efficiency, which we will achieve.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Well, thank you, Michelle. I'd like to thank you, and you have done a great job presenting the design to this point. And I just, it's easy to find out, what might be wrong with everything. But I'd like to just add in that this is really a great project, and we will be so lucky if we can get this built. And the students of Gloucester will be so lucky if we can get this built. We heard tonight from Mike Hale about the life expectancy of the modulars in our buildings, and we really truly need this new school. So thank you for all the work you've done, and I'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you. Stay safe, everyone. Thank you for your time.
Okay. Next order of business is we're going to take up, we touched on this at our last meeting, but the commissioner has allowed us to use 4 days next week as school days, and we need to vote to do that. Rich, you want to elaborate?
Yes, the preliminary recommendations are that because of the school closure, all districts were required to go the requisite 185 days, the 180 plus the 5 snow days. He has since said that the April vacation is a local decision, but that using the 4 days would then reduce the number from the 85 down to the 181. Based on yesterday's phone call, he has been getting some questions about, well, if we used a couple of days prior to the closing, is that going to impact it? He said, I'll have some further guidance. But right now, my understanding is that we use the 4 days, it brings us down to 181. Then there's the day before school and the election day professional development. That's the contractual 183 that we would be paying teachers for. So administration's recommendation is that we go forward. And the union did a survey as well, and the vote was somewhere around 85% to 15% ballpark in favor of maintaining a sense of continuity of learning through what right now is the April vacation.
Not. Any questions anybody would like to ask before we make a motion and have a discussion? Kathy?
What would the last day of school be if this passes?
I think it's June 17th. We were scheduled for the 23rd. Work your way backward. I think it's the 17th.
Any other questions? Okay, then we need a motion.
I'll make a motion that we continue education through the April vacation week for the 4 days.
Second.
Okay,
I
discussion.
think that's better. Don't you?
Yeah, hold on.
Joel?
Hold on.
Yeah, Mayor, you're not muted.
Yeah, I did.
We can hear you.
I know. That's okay.
Oh, sorry. Sorry. So I'm going to vote against this, and I just want to kind of explain my reasoning. The first is that, to my knowledge, we've not received any information that we are not returning to school this year, in which case I would rather 4 6-hour days in person in June than 4 3-hour Zoom days in April. I fully agree that it's a shame to get started on some normalcy in a schedule and then take a pause for a week and expect them to get restarted again. However, I'm incredibly disappointed that during our negotiations about how we're going to move forward as a district with the teachers, we did not address the fact that the goal here is to provide education to our students and try and make up for the time we lost. We'll never recover all the time we lost, but that we didn't work in a way to work through a vacation and still go out as far as we can to try and help these students be as progressed as possible by the time next year starts. It was a total missed opportunity. And so I'm stuck between choosing 4 3-hour Zoom days or 4 6-hour in-person days. Even with the disruption in April, I think you have to go with the 4 6-hour in-person days. Now, again, if I'm incorrect and there's been guidance I haven't been told from DESE or the governor's office that we are not going back and those June days will also be via Zoom, then I'm less hesitant to vote for this. But right now, if we're going back to school, we should have these children as many days as we can in front of actual teachers, not on Zoom.
Melissa?
I just want to say that I am going to support this motion wholeheartedly, and I want to make this loud and clear because I didn't get to say it in the beginning when everyone else did. I am extremely impressed with the fact that the GTA and the 85%, if not more, is on board with this. I think it's very, very important that we keep the momentum. I mean, I do have my granddaughter in my life every day and talk to her about it today, and she's finally on her schedule, and she's enjoying it and looking forward to getting up in the morning. And from a perspective where she's a child that needs consistency, I just think it is very, very important to keep what education is happening, to keep it going. I think if we stop in the middle, it could be a lapse for many students, and I'm not willing to take that chance, especially where the teachers are on board to make this happen. So I wholeheartedly am going to support it. I know we've got an email from parents that have asked us to support this. So that is my position, and I feel very strongly about it because we're getting guidance from the Board of Education on a daily basis. I'm not too worried about going back to school. I mean, I work for the state, and we're being told we're not going to go back till July or August. So who knows what's going to happen? I'm not going to make a decision tonight based on something that could not happen, and support this motion going forward. Thank you.
Okay. Rich, you have some information?
Well, no, I have some good speculation. The commissioner in his phone conference yesterday, when asked the question, quote, probably unlikely that we're going back in May. and that he would provide as quick a heads up as he possibly can. And he expects a decision from the governor by, at the latest, early next week.
Laura?
I just want to understand Joel's position. So Joel, is what you're saying that if we were to go back to school, you'd rather have those 4 days in the classroom in June if we're there? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, we can't go back and undo the mistake of not trying to get the 4 in the forefront and back. So now
Okay.
I'm picking a certain 4 days. I'd rather 4 6-hour days with a person than
Okay.
4 3-hour days.
I just wanted to understand, because I, as a parent whose child has only had 2 days of this so far, and we are 5 weeks into this, I wholeheartedly support this because we're not even on a schedule yet. And to sort of stop and start and stop and start is, you know, on the possibility that we'll get these extra days in June. It's a non-starter for me as a parent and as a school committee member. So I'm very supportive of this measure.
Kathy?
I also am going to support this motion. I think that so many people were so excited to actually begin real learning again when we started the remote. The connection's important, the connection both with teachers and with friends. I've heard from many parents who have said their kids are thriving on a more of a schedule, and to interrupt that learning now would be more harmful than it would be good. No one has mentioned to me any comment about whether we'll be getting done early or not. They just did not want the vacation to happen because they felt the kids have been on vacation, you know, for at least 3 of the weeks in terms of their academic learning. So I think it's important both for the students to continue some real learning, as well as the teachers to continue refining how they're reaching kids and how they're approaching providing that instruction to our kids. And it would be detrimental, I think, to both of them to interrupt that.
Is there any more discussion? Okay. Maria, could we get a roll call vote?
Mr. Favazza,
No.
Chairman Pope,
Yes.
Ms. Prince,
Yes.
Mayor Taken,
Yes.
Ms. Watson,
Yes.
Ms. Wiesen,
Yes.
and Kathy Clancy.
Yes.
It carries 6-1, and we will be having school next week. Superintendent's report, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've got the superintendent's report. There may be a couple of other items that you don't have from the commissioner's call yesterday. And I have sent you a copy of the positive happenings, which I hope to send out tomorrow. And if Greg has had a chance, he may be able to provide us with some anecdotal information about things going in and around the district. And certainly we can invite the principals back at next week's school committee meeting. Item number 1, I had sent out a few days back, I don't recall anymore, some information about where folks can go in order to get the latest information regarding COVID-19 emergency management and any information that they like. I'd like to send out something tomorrow as well, which deals more with the social and emotional piece. So there's some information here from MEMA, from the Massachusetts Emergency Management System, where folks can call. They can call in English, they can call in Spanish, and there are some items here for emotional health assistance. Specifically, if you dial 211, listen to the options, and there's a call to talk, which is option, they say to press 25. The Samaritans is continuing their operations 24/7, and there's some a hotline phone number there as well. There's something called the Disaster Distress Helpline that can provide some crisis counseling for folks in emotional distress. And what you don't have on your report is that if there are concerns about sexual or domestic violence taking place in the home, there's an agency called SafeLink, and they have a hotline at 877-785-2020 and a website as well. So I'll be sending that out. I know at the last governor's briefing, Lieutenant Governor Karen Polito spoke a lot about concerns regarding domestic violence. So I'd like to get that information out as quickly as possible. Item number 2, I just saw this in my emails and sent it to you, particularly because it's a video about teachers at the high school missing their students and the like. It's very nice, but I also wanted to have a shout out for GHS student Martina Gallo, who compiled all the information and materials, and she was able to edit it and put it together. So I thank her for her efforts. And there are other schools that are having drive-by parades and doing other videos and like, but again, I wanted to provide some recognition for Martina. Item number 3, some legislation regarding MCAS, the student opportunity plans. Regional school district budgets don't apply to us. It was on April 10th, as you know, that Governor Baker signed legislation addresses related to the COVID-19 state of emergency, which means a couple of things for us. Number 1, the MCAS testing is canceled for this year. There was a question yesterday as why it took so long for the decision to be made, and bureaucracy moves fairly slowly, but the state had to get a waiver from the federal government, and then the state had to pass legislation giving the authority to the commissioner. He in turn, once granted that authority, has waived the MCAS requirement for the rest of this year. There is the issue of the competency determination for high school graduation, which could impact on seniors, those who have taken retests, and they've taken their latest retests in late February and early March. The results should be coming out. Any further guidance regarding that particular issue, according to the commissioner, will be forthcoming. The next piece is the Student Opportunity Act, and you have already voted and approved prior to the original April 1st deadline our 3-year strategic plan. The commissioner has moved that timeline to May 15th, and he may be extending it even further. Be that as it may, we've got ours done.
Melissa had a question.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
We can't hear you. We're not hearing you, Melissa.
She's muted.
You're muted. Your phone is muted.
I was muted and I lost the meeting, so I had to find it. So sorry.
Okay.
Thank you. I was trying to get your attention when you were talking about the graduation assessment. So it's my understanding you said the students took their test in February and March, and they get the results soon. Is there anything that usually happened after they got the results that would give them another chance? Or has the testing been done accordingly, and even though we're in the situation we're in, it wouldn't matter?
So this is exactly what the Department of Education is working on. That he stated that the retest was taken in February and early March in the hopes that that's going to minimize the number of students that might be at risk. And they'll be providing us with more information. They're anticipating, as they usually do for students in those situations, that there will be an August graduation. There may be an August graduation for everybody, but the kids with a competency determination, it's a question of, can they put another retest together? Can it be manufactured and produced by the companies? How will it be administered remotely? There's all sorts of things that they're working on to try to figure that out. Or ultimately, will he grant a waiver? It's also competency determination has to do with local grades as well, and how the a particular child is performing. So as soon as I get some more information about that, I'll be sharing it with you.
Thank you.
Samantha, did you have a question?
Yeah, sorry, it was about specific to the domestic violence resources. And Safia, chime in too. Do you think it would be helpful to have local resources listed as well as having SafeLink?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I was talking to the Essex Status Commission for Women last night on a before the city council meeting, because I'm on that representing Essex County, and the biggest concerns of some of the people there of domestic violence, defending domestic violence, some of the attorneys who chimed in and Hawk, is that unfortunately most of our abuse relationships are stuck in a household. They can't go to their only person who's surviving. They can't go to their mothers or anywhere else. And when they asked, how's everything going at home? You have the abuser right there. And at least sometimes they had a little break if the abuser went to work, but now they're all stuck home. And the only ones who really noticed the children where the teachers or, you know, the early intervention people or the therapists would know that a child's stuck in a home. How do we do that? And honestly, we're all like in arms, like, how do we, you know, how does a teacher I don't know, but to have someone locally, we do have people locally, to have someone locally to actually say you can call. So maybe they might have, you know, a minute to call, or I don't know. I really don't know. That's really kind of, I think that was like on the back burner on a lot when we were thinking about this. I don't think no one ever thought the schools would be closed more than 2 weeks. That's the whole thing. And now that it keeps continue, it's getting more scarier.
Yeah. So, Rich, just from my own experience working with clients, there's definitely the chance that people are going to hit roadblocks calling just one number. So there's a couple different numbers, including HAWK locally.
Right.
And then there's the National Domestic Violence Hotline as well. I've gotten busy signals trying to call, so I think the more resources, the better to give people options.
Yeah, very good point. Thank you. Yep.
The better. So
yeah, we'll do it.
okay,
We'll do
thank
it.
you.
Good. Oops.
I would just like to point something out. I mean, there's indications that there's an increase of domestic abuse, but our teachers and school nurses are some of the primary reporters of child abuse. And with them out of the picture, I don't know how, you know, what we can do to try to, because kids aren't going to call up and report it, you know. So what do we know about that situation?
Well, what I can speak to is we have lots of social service folks and our special education staff and the like that are reaching out to families, to the children on a weekly basis. I ask you to take a look at the positive happenings that I sent out this afternoon to you, which I want to send out tomorrow. But there's attempts at a lot of communication in that particular regard. I'm getting only very few reports that there are children that they're not able to get into contact with. And one of the questions I've been asked is whether or not we can use our SROs and the cops and kids for some outreach as well. And that's something I want to take up with Chief Connolly, and I'm going to be doing so. But again, it's my understanding that many of our staff are trying to reach out to the kids, and I don't know the extent to which children who may be vulnerable are able to relate and communicate their situation or not. That's a very gray area.
Samantha?
And last week, I asked sort of a similar question, and it sounded like everybody's sort of aware and prepared to do well child checks if necessary, right? So if somebody's concerned about the well-being of a kid based on whether or not they don't participate or how they present in a Zoom meeting, you know, the teachers do know that they can ask somebody to do a well child check, right? That's part
Yes.
of the protocol. Okay.
Yes.
I know there's like so many gray areas with this because we're virtual, but you know, I think it's just helpful to know that everybody has the same protocol in regards to it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Melissa?
We're in the age of see something, say something, and I'm wondering if it would be helpful if either Rich or you, Chairman Pope, write a letter to the editor or to the newspaper, or I think we may even have the Gloucester Daily Times listening now, but maybe bringing it to the attention of the community of the struggles that come with domestic violence and things like that. And maybe it will just raise awareness to the community so that we're all looking out for each other and things like that with a number that they can report it. Because obviously our mandated reporters don't get the opportunity to see the child or the family so much right now. So maybe just bringing this issue to head for the whole community to see as an extra set of eyes.
Right. Well, again, those items, number one, plus more local information will go out to the families in the school department. And it doesn't take much of a stretch to take that information and send it over with a cover letter to the newspapers as well. Okay. Item number 4, just some legal advisories, just to give you a sense of some of the things that we've been taking into account as we move forward with the whole remote learning process. On teachers recording live lessons for the purpose of sharing it with students who are absent. They can record remote lessons provided that proper notice is given to parents and students ahead of time. And you'll hear this a couple of 3 times, but we've done that with the disclaimer / acknowledgement of what we can and cannot do with respect to confidentiality, and also what the expectations are from students and parents. For example, they cannot reproduce or transmit any of the information that they're getting from a third party. So we have done legally what we are required to do. Recording in the remote instruction is no violation of the Family Education Rights and Privacy Act unless you are disclosing something which is personally identifiable about a particular child, and if it's part of a student record. So just having kids on the video, the legal recommendation is to the extent possible, it should really only be the instructor and the material, but there is no violation of the child's rights or their records if they are shown. Where it can become part of a record is if the recording's used for disciplinary action, or it shows a student in violation of local, state, or federal law, or if it shows that there happens to be some assaultive behavior going on. Those are the kinds of things that would drift into the FERPA protections and stuff. So if something like that should happen, teachers will know that they need to report that to us, and we'll take the necessary security measures to ensure that we're not, we'll do our best to make sure that we're not violating individual students' rights. Regarding concerns about parents possibly or expectedly observing instruction and service delivery, again, there's nothing wrong with a parent inadvertently observing a lesson, provided that they understand that there is a disclaimer and a consent to participate, which makes very clear to the parent and the child that there is to be no third-party access. And we have already sent out that information to all families. Since we're doing things remotely, this not only includes the academic piece, but also teletherapy and some special education modifications and accommodations and the like. What's relevant here is that a number of our specialists in speech and language pathology, audiologists, physical therapy, OT, occupational therapy, there is a requirement of 10 hours of training if they're going to do what's called telepractice policy. The state has temporarily waived that so that we can go full speed ahead with the consultations that are necessary, and the practitioner has to get that required 10 hours in sometime within the next 4 months, I believe. So we're good to go, but they'll have to get that training later, but they can do so because of the waiver. The same is true for the other services. We mentioned, can districts do a lunch bunch? The answer is yes, but apparently we're not going to be doing that. On paraprofessionals providing support or one-to-one service, as long as the format is workable for the paraprofessional and the student, and we'll try to be accommodating that with the memorandum of understanding that we would like to put forward with our education support professionals. But the paraprofessionals, by regulation, they can phone, they can video conference, they can email, depending upon the particular needs of the student, and we will try to remain very consistent with that. The other important piece is that they have to, like the teachers, we have to document and chronicle the work that's being done, because once we are back in school, depending upon the extent of services we can provide, that will determine what we might have to do that's compensatory as well. So obviously, it's very important to keep records. As far as the English language learners, it's very important that we continue to facilitate their learning. We had a meeting about this last week, and it's not enough for the EL children to be sitting in regular classes, virtual or otherwise. We are also working out the schedule so that they're getting direct instruction as well. At the high school, definitely, and I believe at the middle school as well, there are specific classes for them. And at the elementaries, they're looking at that more flex type schedule and trying to figure out exactly where the children will be able to be placed so they can get direct contact with their English language learner teachers. So that is that's the superintendent's report that you have. I would just like to add a couple of items as well. This is from the report yesterday from the commissioners. Apparently September 14th is going to be Patriots Day, again, Redux, and the Boston Marathon. This Monday remains a holiday. It's still in the works as to whether or not the September 14th is going to become an official state holiday as well. If it is, then you guys are probably going to have to look at the calendar and make some changes, but you'll know that before the end of this school year. I mentioned before that the governor is expected to make a decision by early next week or before on whether or not to extend the school closures beyond the May 4th. There was some stuff about student registration. We have been working on creating a system for student registration, including a newly generated form created by Mr. Bach, where parents can go online and it's a PDF that you can actually type into and they can do the form online. And we've also created procedures whereby they can either scan and send the other supplemental materials, or we can work out a social distanced drop-off kind of situation, but we've been working on that. Another issue we've been talking about is the screening of English language learners. The Department of Ed has sent out some guidance on provisional identification and how to screen individuals and to do your best remotely. It's referred to as provisional screening. We're aware of this and we're working on that as well. A report, and I did receive an email late this afternoon from MASS, Mass Association of School Superintendents. MIT is doing a report of state-by-state comparisons with respect to the recommendations coming out of the respective departments of education on remote learning. Massachusetts, apparently, the advance notice is that they've gotten some good reviews with respect to the advice that we have received, which has been the basis, as you know, for our memorandum of understanding. But the point that was made by the commissioner, which is a good one, we're going to have to look back, and putting things down on paper is great, but what is the execution? And we can expect some more guidance on that next week. There is a statewide technology survey as well. So far, 191 districts have responded. We need to do the same. But the state wants to know how many children don't have access, how many are sharing computers with other families, how many families have one computer but 2, 3, 4, 5 kids in the home. The purpose of this is to gather that data, but the department apparently is working with corporations, both the telecommunications and with the powerhouses like Dell and HP and all the rest, to see if they can find ways to provide more access for children with respect to technology. Relatively speaking, we're in pretty good shape. Historically, the western part of the state has always been in rather dire shape when it comes to having full internet systems. As we know, the budget for FY21 is under serious pressure. The ranges of revenue losses at the state level vary anywhere from $2 and $6 billion. They being the state, need to go right back to the drawing board. What we were told by the CFO from the Department of Ed is that traditionally the governor creates a budget, the House does, and then the Senate. This year, it appears as though the House and the Senate may develop the budget together, like a CM at risk, closely with the governor. Timing is still questionable as to whether or not they're going to have a budget by July the 1st. Quote, too many factors. Revenues must be assessed. Very difficult to put a final budget together at this particular point in time. Um, our local situation is one thing. What we're hearing from the state actually appears to be potentially a little bit more tumultuous. We don't, the fellow said that they're not even sure that the Student Opportunity Act money, $229,000 on top of the Chapter 70 coming to us right now, is not an absolute lock. It's not a guarantee. In terms of the federal, waiting for some guidance, that $2 trillion, the CARES Act, about 215 million's worth is being appropriated to the state of Massachusetts and will be distributed probably along Title I guidelines, which is based, as you know, upon percentages of low income. So we're going to wait and see what happens there. I mentioned the MCAS. We talked about April vacation. If school closing is extended, they will be, the State Department of Education will be providing further guidance around, quote, power standards. And the question has come up as to whether or not teachers should be moving forward with new curriculum and instruction. The response there is that they will provide us with more guidance on that at another time, but it's something that people are at least thinking about. It's very tough to really know how to think about that right now as we're getting our scheduling off the ground. Teacher evaluation. This is best left to local districts based upon different contracts. There are a couple of recommendations. I think I sent you a document from Mike Long, legal counsel for the Mass Association of School Committees, and a couple of suggestions. Look to the last formal assessment, either formative or summative, and use that as the basis to carry through for this year, or simply pause and recommence next year with each teacher being in the with the same status. Right now, our MOU through school closure with the teachers is that the evaluation would be extended the same amount of time as school has been closed. But if school closes for the rest of the year, where does that put us? Probably the easiest option would be to pause and then to begin again next year, where teachers carry over their status from one year to the next. And quite frankly, the same holds true for somebody who's a first-year teacher this year. We don't have a baseline for them, but we'd really have to just begin next year and do our evaluations with the requisite scrutiny. And I think that's about it. Somebody asked whether or not MCAS 2021 was going to be canceled. And the answer was at this time, no, a firm no, but nobody knows how long and how extensive our current situation is going to be. Okay. Next, and I mentioned to you that the Positive Happenings school closure update is in your hands, and I hope to send it out probably tomorrow. But it gives families a little bit of a sense of an overview of what they're experiencing, and hopefully provide you with a bit of an explanation as a follow-up to last week's dialogue with the principals, and in anticipation of next week's conversation with them as well. The first video is on the Facebook, on the website. Greg and I spent a half an hour or so talking about the situation, and we put that out there. And we'll try to be doing one each Friday and getting those up as well. And Greg, is there anything that you wanted to add?
I wouldn't mind adding just a little bit of insight into what the teachers are up to, if that's okay. It's one of the very positive parts of my day today, was seeing the number of teachers who came by the main office to pick up a Chromebook to take it to a student or a family who had, in conversation, through instruction, had let them know that they were sharing, and this comes back to our technology coverage in our city as well, that had communicated that it was challenging because they were sharing with a brother or sister or two brothers or sisters, and the teachers reached out to me, and in some cases drove up and picked up a computer to deliver to the home. So we've been responding to any request for where there's a need in a family that has multiple siblings. We're taking care of that. So that was a really nice thing to see, and that's been happening the last few days. And then this afternoon, I had I was in on a Zoom call with a dozen teachers who were looking into piloting a revised math curriculum for next year. They were intently, and this was teachers talking to teachers, and I've been around long enough that I'm kind of part of the furniture. So they're just, they're talking to each other about the challenges, about goals, about things they're doing, and they are actively working on and thinking about revisions they need to make for now to take into account the lack of coverage, work that might need to happen in the fall, as well as piloting adjustments for next year. So they're right in the midst of all of this instruction, and they're already looking at the impact of next year and beginning to plan for that. And I do just want to share that this is a group of teachers who I've known for a long time, and they just do not exaggerate at all. And at the end of the call, they were, proud and happy about what they are doing and sharing, but they also said that their days are, in many cases, 12 to 15 hours, because one of the things we don't realize is that each of those interactions with the students can sometimes generate 15 or 20 emails afternoon and evening and morning, because once it's much more challenging to be able to connect and communicate content and understanding to the students, and they have individual needs and questions, and they're reaching out to the teachers all hours of the day. So there's a lot of communication that's going back and forth, a lot of support. And I just have a tremendous amount of respect for what they're doing. And I know that that's happening in schools, all schools across the district. So, along with the positive happenings that we saw, the kind of feel good things, I think one of the positive takeaways is that we have a lot of teachers working really hard to maintain individual support and connections with lots of families and students.
Samantha?
Thank you, Greg, for that. I'm just curious, are there conversations with teachers on, or just support for teachers on how to create boundaries around sort of this new frontier of endless communication? I'm hoping that teachers are feeling comfortable setting boundaries at some point, because although it's really nice, and I'm sure people really appreciate that people are putting in 15 days, I'm sure a lot of these people have families. And I think at some point that's really unrealistic. And I just want to make sure that teachers are feeling supported.
It is unrealistic. It is early and it's new, which is why I think they're really front loading a lot of time. And they did talk about that. We've talked about that. That has come up in a number of cases. And it's certainly something that I know that the principals will be talking about during staff meetings. Teachers are doing a lot of sharing during common planning time, during afternoon meetings, staff meetings, and I do feel that a good balance will be found. But I just want to acknowledge that right now, in the newness of all of this, they're working really hard to do this, and the students and their families need it, and the teachers are providing it. So my hat's off to them. And yes, we will make sure that they understand that that we recognize that they have very full lives as well, and that they feel supported. At when there's nobody who is expecting to do this, it's an understanding that they are responding to a need, and hopefully it will normalize.
And guess I'm more wondering if at some point from the administration it would be helpful to just send a message to parents that, you know, teachers might not get back to them right away. And I think we're just so accustomed to having communication at our fingertips and expecting people to get back to each other right away. And I do feel like it might be helpful for somebody to set a clear message that it might not happen that day, that maybe the next day, just so that people aren't putting in 15 hours.
Yeah, and I have to say I said that because I wanted to acknowledge the kind of hard work, and we all hope that that is not a norm and that doesn't continue. And I trust our administrators and our staff to communicate and share that message, and we'll make sure we do the same from the central office.
Thank you.
Kathy.
I know Rich and Greg, you both mentioned a little bit about both the Department of Ed guidelines and what advice they're giving and Greg, you mentioned planning to how we make it up kind of next year. And speaking from somebody who has a high school sophomore, there's certain content that is going to show up on a SAT or an ACT test that isn't just how well can he write, but is he being tested on material that maybe he won't get to. So and I realize right now we're dealing with the here and now, but I'm hoping we're thinking about what remedial or extra tutoring might happen next school year for some of these real content related material that kids need to know that they can't get away with not knowing, you know. So just a comment.
Yep, it's very much on everyone's minds.
Yeah, thank you.
Laura?
Thank you. And to Rich and Greg and all the teachers, you know, thank you for everything you're doing in this really chaotic and crazy moment. I have a few questions related to my experience with elementary, and I just wanted to get a sense of this. And we also, some school committee members received a letter from a parent also asking about consistency through the elementary schools. It's pretty clear that every elementary school is on a different, working in a very different way. And I'm wondering if we're having principals share best practices, if there's anything, because I'm told that one elementary school parents are leading Zoom meetings every morning so the kids can get together, at least in one grade. Rich, you had sent out a group call coming from West Parish, which was to all the students. I can only speak to our school from a parent's perspective, but basically what's happening at every school is different. It also started at different times. The way it's happening is different. And I'm wondering if there's any interest in or effort towards, or if there's any benefit to being more consistent across the schools.
Well, I would, working in a standards-based environment, my immediate answer is yes. This is like the Wild West, and putting things into place, it's almost like venture capitalism. What are schools, what are individual teachers, what are groups of teachers coming up with? It's been since last Wednesday. And we need to have the dust settle, and we need to talk with the principals and say, well, what is working and how? It's not to suggest that prior to school closure that they didn't have their own distinct ways of doing things either. So this could be an extension and a manifestation of the same. But your point is very well taken. How do we strike a balance between ensuring that initiative and creativity has a chance to flourish, and at the same time, how do we ensure that the best practices themselves are being distributed equally across all of the schools? So the point that you're making is that there are discrepancies and that there's a concern about that, and that's something that we will take up with the principals at our next meeting.
And that's not a blame for anyone. I think people have different creative ideas, but you know, some schools didn't start last Wednesday, like ours. So even that, you know, not every school started last week. Some schools started this week.
Yeah.
So
well, we can certainly ask why. I don't know if you're aware of that, Greg, as to the why.
No, I'm not. I would expect significant differences, especially at this point in such a dramatic transition. And all I can say is I know that teachers are working really hard and sharing across the district, but that takes a little bit of time. And yeah, we will definitely talk together with the principals about major discrepancies. I think they're going to happen no matter what. They do currently. Schools have different characters. Things are handled slightly differently from one school to another. We can do the best we can. There are always going to be differences, but if there are major things that are missing at one, then certainly we can share that.
Okay, well, I'm happy to write you separately on that. And then related to that, you know, the differentiation that happens in each classroom, you know, regularly is obviously much, much harder to achieve now. And again, you just said it, we're waiting for the dust to settle. My experience so far with the remote learning is that it's at a very, 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 it's at a level that includes the most possible students, which leaves some students out. So I'm just wondering, and again, I know everybody's working really hard to get this working at all, but I'm wondering when or how or if there's a possibility to have differentiation in the learning now, or if we should sort of plan that that's not really going to be a possibility at this point.
When you say the most possible, could you explain what you mean by that?
I can only speak to my personal experience as a first grade parent. And what I'm seeing in some of the work that's coming home is quite basic. So basic as to not be of interest. And I understand that there are children who are still learning some of those things, but I've heard from other parents as well, wondering why this work is coming home at this level. So I can only imagine that, you know, what the teachers have said to me is we want to make sure everyone understands certain concepts, but these concepts seem very, very basic. And again, the teachers know the students better than I do. I don't have a breadth of understanding of every student in a grade. And obviously the things are tailored to an entire grade, but it's not just my experience. So that's what it sort of feels like we're starting at a very basic level. And I'm just wondering if we can expect there to be differentiation for other students as well. And I can tell you offline, Rich, and other, you know, what more specifically.
Yeah.
But I know this is very hard and the dust is settling. I just don't know. It took so long to get this up, and I get that, and I know everyone's working, but the differentiation is a tricky bit of business anytime. But I hope that's in the conversation now.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. A couple of things. Greg, were you part of the conversation where somebody was talking about offering children and their families 3 options to the same assignment?
I'm quite certain that there's differentiation going on at different ways across the district. I just have to say that I saw an email today where there were 20 exchanges between the teacher and the student, because this past week or so, imagine trying to teach a class of first graders and trying to get over the technological hurdle alone in being able to participate in any kind of two-way learning, to be able to access and navigate the materials that are provided. I know that a lot of the hours that teachers are experiencing right now are around logistics, technology, interactions, rebuilding relationships in this different way, very different way of communicating. That is an enormous undertaking, and it's Wednesday, and so I would ask for a little bit of patience on what, as you noted, is really challenging on a normal day in a regular classroom. Differentiation is a real challenge in these kinds of conditions. If it takes a little bit longer to develop, it's not a surprise to me. I'd be happy to have you send me more specific details, and we can look into things if they seem really out of the ballpark. But I think a little bit of patience for all the logistics and details that are involved with this kind of shift is in order. So
Absolutely. Point well taken, Greg. Thank you.
Okay, anything more, Rich? Okay, do we have a motion to accept the superintendent's report?
So moved.
Second.
Got that, Maria?
Yeah.
Get out of the way.
Just pick one.
Pick one. Roll call vote.
Mr. Favazza,
Yes.
Chairman Pope,
Yes.
Ms. Prince,
Yes.
Mayor Taken,
Yes.
Ms. Watson,
Yes.
Ms. Weason,
Yes.
and Kathy Clancy.
Yes.
So we're going to move on to committee reports. And first up is the program subcommittee meeting of April 10th, 2020. And Chairman Favazza, would you like to report out?
Sure, let me grab my notes. We discussed 3 items. The first was trying to combat absenteeism. This is something that was brought to our attention by Greg Bach for a number of reasons. One, it's good practice, and 2, that the turnaround plans that were being provided with all indicate that absenteeism is likely a component to the issues that we've been facing in the district. Greg, correct me if I'm wrong, but is it 30% of high school population is absent 18 or more days a year? The right set of numbers?
during this past reporting year, yes, it was 30% for across the board, not a specialized population, but for all students, it was 30%, 18 or more days. And that significantly impacts a student's progress in education.
Right. As Dr. Sapphire often points out, it doesn't matter how good the instruction is, if the child's not in the seat to receive it, it's not going to do them any good. So the subcommittee discussed trying to avoid reinventing the wheel. We certainly can't be the first district that's been struggling with this. And so the plan forward was to reach out to a consultant. Greg thought that there might be some extra money lying around due to funds that are no longer going to be expended as a result of the shutdown. And he's going to work to try and engage a consultant to help provide some guidance, and that'll come back to the program subcommittee and then up to the full committee when that gets worked out. The second issue we talked about was high school start time. As you know, there's been a push in various pockets of the state and various pockets of the nation to start high school and middle schools later in the day than they traditionally are started currently. we set about trying to figure out the steps we go about to analyze this. So the first step is to compile data both in support and against such a switch. I'm going to get a report of pros together. Laura has volunteered to do some research trying to find some cons. After we review the data, we'll decide whether the data favors making a switch. And if we decide that it does, we'll review successful implementation processes from other districts that have completed the switch and try and reconcile those procedures and that process with the specific challenges of the Gloucester Public School systems. Principal Cook from the high school was on the meeting, and he mentioned that Beverly High School seems to have figured this out. They start a bit later than Gloucester High School does. And then third step would be if we're able to determine that we can reconcile how the switch works with our community and that we can pull off the switch, we would make a recommendation up to the school committee to review the work that's been done and see whether the school committee supports moving forward. So if at any of those points we get to a no, a negative recommendation will just come up out of the subcommittee. And the third item we touched on was screen time safety and health issues. As you probably know, overuse and or unmonitored use of screens by children can lead to various ailments, including physical ailments, social and emotional problems. We're discussing the potential to help educate parents, especially even beginning at preschool, about the importance of limiting and properly monitoring screen time. However, we didn't want to push too hard on that right now because, frankly, a lot of parents, including those on the subcommittee, admitted that right now a lot are leaning very heavily into screen time as a crutch to get through this quarantine. And we don't want to, accidentally upset or shame any parent who right now is letting their child use a screen more than they otherwise would. But it's something to begin thinking about so as we go forward into the next school year. If we return to somewhat of a normal society, we can start working on making sure that, especially the children now who we talked about, who may have otherwise had a good balance prior to the shutdown, who now have slipped into an out of balance relationship with screen time, will be even more important that when we are able to find viable alternatives that we help parents provide those. And that, I think, was it. Obviously, Sam and Laura, if I've missed anything or miscategorized anything, feel free to jump in. Okay.
Thank you very much. We will now, we had a building and finance subcommittee meeting just prior to this meeting. And Chairman Clancy, would you like to report out?
Sure. So we went over where we're at in terms of fiscal year 20, and we're in good shape within the budget, obviously, with room to make a sizable prepay for our special education, which we do at the end of every year. And obviously things are being monitored in terms of where there's savings right now versus where we're going to have overages. There's other things that are going on, such as our food service is providing a lot of help to the community and to our families. So that's costing us more money than is coming in. There's another item we talked about, preschool, so there might be less revenue. So there's certain things that are going on the positive side and the negative side. So we're going to keep an eye on that as it relates to the end of this school year. We did have a wonderful conversation with Mike Hale from the Department of Public Works, mostly positive and some concerning in terms of both, mostly the condition of our modulars. So we're going to continue a conversation about that. But I do want to point out some of the positives of what he is doing at O'Malley right now, which I think it's been somewhat under the radar, but happening behind the scenes. And tonight he gave us a full list of all the things that are happening at the middle school while the kids and teachers are not there. One that's very visible is on the outside where they're fixing a lot of the concrete. They have widened some walkways. They've created an ADA ramp to get into the school. They have planted trees along the road and created a few handicap parking spaces in front of the rink. They are painting the sign outside for the school. It's going to be maroon instead of green, which I think that'll really kind of, spruce up the place. What else did he talk about? Oh, bathrooms, which I know have been on a list and certainly a concern of many parents in the past, that sometimes the rooms are locked and there's not enough privacy for the girls. And, it's just having to do with patching things for so long that things just tend not to work. And so the bathrooms have been updated with new partitions and new fixtures and hand dryers instead of paper towels. They've done some painting. They've done some installation of benches around the school. Just a real extensive bit of work on our middle school. I know, it could be a never-ending list if we think only about aesthetics, but they've been working on all of the interior and things you can't see, such as roofs and HVAC and everything in previous years that make us as school committee members feel that that building is safe and good quality and structurally sound. And this particular project, I think, is going to have a real boost in terms of morale and aesthetics and pride and function of the school actually on the outside. So I can't thank Mike Hale enough for the work that he and his crew are doing at the middle school. We had Anne Marie Jordan come to us with a situation with the preschool. Jonathan, do you want to take up this motion tonight, given the timeliness of it?
Yes, I think we can. It's coming out of committee and it is timely right now.
Yes, so the preschool is currently, and anybody can jump in from administration that wants to, but they're currently continuing to provide online education for students, but as everything else, everything's at a reduced amount of time. So Anne Marie gave us some information about some districts are not charging tuition for their preschool kids. Others are charging half tuition. Others haven't really made a decision. So we have a motion that Maria is actually going to read out because it was a little bit lengthy and I don't want to get it wrong, where we are recommending that we reduce our tuition for families to half. So Maria, can you read that motion, please?
Sure. So it was after discussion, it was on a motion by Mr. Pope, seconded by Mr. Favazza, to recommend to the full school committee that we reduce the preschool tuition for April, May, and June to 50% of the current monthly charge, and let people know that we will consider reducing it to 0 if people's situation has been adversely affected due to COVID-19.
And I so move.
Second. Is there any discussion, Laura?
I just have a question. I don't know what, just from a financial perspective, how big a hit is that to the school budget?
The estimate was around 18,000.
Okay, thank you.
And it was also pointed out that they had firsthand discussions with some families who were laid off because of the situation, and they wouldn't be able to pay it. They would have to drop out. And I think it's in all of our best interest if these students continue to receive education. Samantha?
And it was also, and correct me if I'm wrong, it was also reported out that this is pretty much in line with other districts, right? That a lot of districts are doing the 50%.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any further?
Is this for what again? Can you repeat that? I'm sorry.
It's tuition to the preschool for the non-special needs students, the model students that we take in. I'm going to say it's $35 a week, but I may be wrong about that. So what we're talking, they're still providing the services online to the preschoolers, but.
Oh, they are. So the teachers they are doing preschool work with them?
Yes, they are.
Okay.
And they, but it's not for the same period of time that
No.
they were going to school for. So the recommendation out of BNF is to reduce it by 50% and to take into consideration if anybody's family is adversely affected by the COVID-19 virus, that we would consider reducing it to 0.
Okay.
Okay. Any further discussion? Roll call vote, Maria?
Mr. Favazza,
Yes.
Chairman Pope,
Yes.
Ms. Prince,
Yes.
Mayor Taken,
Yes.
Ms. Watson,
Yes.
Ms. Gleason,
Yes.
and Kathy Clancy.
Yes.
So it passes unanimously. Kathy, you want to go back to
Sure.
the,
We also had another, so Kathy Verga joined us to talk about transportation for out-of-district students and payments to vendors. Some of these our 4 vendors would like us to continue paying them, even though out-of-district is not being provided, transportation is not being provided. And there is some waiting for guidance, I think, from the state on this particular item, both for tuition and for transportation. So we thought we would just wait to get more information between the state and the superintendents as to what people are doing in general as it relates to these particular relationships with vendors. We want the vendors to be there and be ready to be transporting our kids. On the other hand, it's a service we're not actually being provided. So we're trying to come up with what's fair and what's advised from the state level. So we're going to continue that discussion as more information comes in. And the last item that is a motion has to do you want to do the food service tonight or want to wait till the minutes are that transfer?
Well, let me ask Gary. Gary, is this time sensitive? Can this wait till next week?
Yeah, yes, this can wait.
Okay.
No problem.
All right, then we'll put that off. But the issue, well, you can explain the issue, Kathy.
Yeah, the issue is that the amount of work that our food service people are providing and the benefit they're providing to families in our community, you know, it can't be quantified in terms of how critical it is to supporting people. But it's costing the district more money than it is that we'll be getting reimbursed from the programs that help subsidize these costs. So we need to basically account for that in our financials by covering that expense somewhere else. So that's what we'll take up next week. Okay, and that's my report.
Thank you very much. We don't really need to do the MSBA update other than to say that there will be a building committee meeting tomorrow at 5 o'clock. And we're going to go into executive session for the purpose of discussing, is it strategy or approval?
It's strategy. We haven't.
Okay,
Strategy.
so,
Yes, strategy.
okay, for the purpose of discussing strategy for negotiations with the Gloucester paraprofessionals, education support professionals, excuse me. And we'll need a motion to go into executive session. We'll come out of executive session only for the purpose of adjourning.
Can I just bring up a couple of things before we go into executive session?
Sure.
First of all, who's been updating the Gloucester Public Schools website because it looks fabulous? I just wanted to give credit to whoever did some work on it. Very user-friendly compared to what it was a couple weeks ago. So I just want to say kudos to whoever did that.
I believe that would be Mr. Harris doing the
Thank you very
actual
much.
update.
Good job. It was very easy to figure out when I got there. Second of all, I just wanted to say the article in the newspaper this morning, I think it was, about the St. Peter's Fiesta being given another date in case it doesn't go forward in June, seemed to trigger some conversation in the community very early this morning, because I woke up to several texts and messages on my phone from parents hoping and wondering that we will have a conversation about setting a date for graduation and the prom if they don't happen. So I just want to put that out there. I know it's been brought up. I know we're committed to doing something in the alternative if we can, but I really think parents are really eager to hear us have a conversation about it. I know now tonight's not the time, but I'm hoping maybe at our next meeting we can start talking about, is this going to be a rescheduling or not? Because parents really want to know the answer to this question, especially knowing that if Fiesta has another date, they want to know if their seniors have another date. It's that simple. So I'm just hoping at the next meeting or by the end of April, we have some sort of plan of how we're going to address the fact if they don't go forward. And I know we probably have to wait until the governor announces next week whether we go back to school or not. But I just don't want to lose track of that, because there are many eager parents waiting to hear from us on that issue.
Well, we're meeting again next Wednesday. We can put it on the agenda, and hopefully we'll have more information about our future.
And before we go into executive session too, I was wondering if Grant could send an invite for executive session to Naomi Stomberg. I see she's on as an attendee to this meeting, and I had asked her if she could be on standby for our conversation executive session, but now that I think about it, if Grant has the ability to send her the Zoom information for the executive session meeting, that might be helpful to have her in the room.
Yes, I can do that. Can someone make sure that I have her email address?
Yep.
I'll
I
take
can
care of
text that to you. Or I can't text it to you because I'm using my phone. I can email it to you, or somebody can.
I'll send it over right now.
Thank you.
Okay.
So we're going to still move that motion to go into executive session.
Second, anybody?
Second.
Second,
Okay. Roll call, Maria?
discussion?
Discussion? Sure, we can have discussion.
I'm confused. So I want to make sure I understand the procedure here. We're leaving this meeting and going into a different platform to have the executive session.
Yes.
Are we able to just stop broadcasting this meeting? That's what we do in the beginning. These meetings get started. They're not pushed to the public until 7, and then they're pushed public. Can't we pull it back and stay right here and then push it back public to adjourn instead of leaving, going to Google, coming back to this one? Grant?
I talked with James about that, and this is actually his recommendation to do that, is to leave this meeting open and running because it's considered a public meeting, go into the other session, then come back. That was his recommendation, and I'm sticking to that. So, I mean, I can.
So keep this. So don't leave this meeting. Just mute this meeting.
I am not going to leave this meeting. You all can leave the meeting, but I will stay here to keep it as an active session. Because if I leave, it shuts down. So I have to keep this meeting open for the duration of your executive session.
And then we come back into the same room.
Well, then we come back into this session. So you were sent out an invitation. It says right on it, executive session. So what you're going to do is, depending on how you can either leave this meeting and come back to it, or you could just leave it up and open another window and go to the executive session. But you can leave and come back.
Okay.
When you get to that little, the little Zoom website,
Yep.
The little icon, you just click on join the meeting. So, so that's the way it'll work. And we can, certainly we can look into easier ways of doing it, Joel, but this isn't the time. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So we have a motion and a second to go into executive session. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote, Maria?
Mr. Favazza,
Yes.
Chairman Pope,
Yes.
Ms. Prince,
Yes.
Mayor Taken.
Yeah, I said yes.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Watson,
Yes.
Ms. Weason,
Yes.
and Kathy Clancy.
Yes.
Okay, we will adjourn and reconvene in executive session. See you all there in a couple of minutes.
Do we leave this meeting, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Leave.
Dr. Sapphire, you're not muted. Just a heads up.
I love that smile.
Uh, Can you hear me? Can anybody hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, because my computer just told me there was something wrong with my microphone. So let's see. Joel made it. Safafia made it, and I made it.
One more, we have a quorum.
So Melissa and Laura and Samantha are listed under attendees. Grant, I don't know what they're raising their hands too.
They clicked the wrong link.
Oh, there's Samantha. She's here.
I'm pulling them in now.
Pulling him in. Okay. Looks like Melissa. We've lost Melissa.
We're taking any action, or are we just moving to adjourn?
1 minute.
So I'll put the motion out there.
Okay. Melissa, where are you? Melissa sent me a text that says, I am disabled. And then there's a picture of her computer, but I can't read it. It's too small. We can adjourn without her. Pretty
I move
much.
to adjourn.
We
Second,
have a second. Roll call vote, Maria?
Joel,
Yes.
Jonathan,
Yes.
Safafia,
Get me the hell out of here, yes.
Samantha,
Yep.
Laura.
Yes.
It passes
yes.
6-1. And she just voted on texted me that she voted. She said she can hear us. She just can't see it.
All right. Good night.
Good night,
night,
everyone. The
everyone. Be safe.
meeting is adjourned. Stay
Night.
safe and keep up the good work.
Thanks, Grant.
Thanks, Grant.
Good night.
Night.